Let me introduce myself, Bla Xit Family. My name is Humphrey Smith, and I live in the United States. But I'm in New York on Long Island. And anybody that knows about New York knows that it's a very fast-paced, very competitive, very aggressive place. Not like all the places in the U.S. A lot of places are really not like this. But New York is, it's a challenge. The U.S. is a challenge, but New York is extremely challenging. It's the vanguard of being challenging. And I wanted to take this opportunity to share with the Bla Xit family what life is like in the United States. Now, for those that have never been here, this is really for you. For those that are here, you already know. Now, what I've been doing is reflecting on my life because I'm 59, I'm going to be 60 soon. And my parents immigrated here when I was a very young child. And they brought us here when I was about almost 11 years old. And so I had to grow up here and learn this place. And one of the things I can look back at now is that for anybody that doesn't know, the U.S. is like a propaganda machine. The stuff that they'll tell you about this country, most of it is lies. There may be some truth, but most of it is lies. If you watch movies and films, you're not really seeing the real United States. What you're really seeing is what they want you to see and not what most people have to endure. So when you're behind the propaganda machine, you know, you're reaching out, and especially because they're never going to tell black and brown people what really happens here, especially to them. And that's really important that you understand that. This country has done some good things and a lot of bad things. But there's a brother here, he's an activist, his name is Al Sharpton. And he always makes a point of saying that even a broken clock is right 2 times a day. So I really don't know if the good things that they have done, if they were accidentally done or not, or if they were intentional. But it seems that this country has only made decisions to do the things it does based on profit margin. So when they do things that seem really altruistic, you wonder, why are they doing this? Because if it's not profit driven, the United States does not do it. They just do not do it. So let's begin. When you look at the United States and its history, you have to understand that this nation began with the exploitation of human beings. Because when the Europeans came from England and the other places that they came from, whether it was France or wherever, Spain, they met people that were already here. They were indigenous people. They'll call them Native Americans, the American Indians, but they were indigenous people that were already here. And the white English settler community, they did a genocidal attack against these people. One of the things they did that really decimated the Native American population was they gave them blankets from English hospitals that had been infected with the smallpox virus. Now, the Native American population had no antibodies against things like smallpox. So when this was introduced into their midst, just think of it as biological warfare. They had no defense against smallpox, and smallpox decimated the Native American community. I mean, even to this day, there's only something like 5 million Native Americans that are left. So when that smallpox hit them, not only were they dying, but whoever survived, they were so weakened that they could never, ever mount a serious attack against the white settler community because their numbers had been so decimated and whoever was left was so weakened that they no longer posed a threat. And by doing this, the white settler community was able to basically get these people and do with them whatever they wanted to do. Now, in their defense, I will say that the Native Americans were very trusting. They were very hopeful that they would sign treaties with the white man. And every treaty that they signed, the whites did not honor. They broke every treaty, broke every treaty. And eventually, they stole all the land from the Native Americans. They created these places called reservations, and they put them to live there. These places are typically the worst land, and it's far away from everything, and there's nothing near there. They've taken everything from these people. Today, they're really a non-factor in running the nation. I mean, you could say, okay, cool, they've got their own nations and it's on these reservations, but really and truly, If you think about it, this reservation system was a precursor to what South Africa did, using this example, creating homelands for black people and moving them and putting them where they couldn't be seen or heard. Now, the mistake they made was trusting the white man. And if you really look at that example, what the whites did to the Native Americans is really what the whites want to do to Africans. But for some reason, we've just been a little more resilient, and we've never, ever stopped coming back from whatever it is they've tried to do to us. Now, racism in the United States is real. It's pervasive. It could be strong, like in your face racism, but it could also be subtle and very hidden and hard for you to detect. But it permeates every level of American society. There's nowhere you could go that racism isn't factored in. The racism, it leaves us all like kind of scratching our heads because we really don't know what to do and how to react to the racism. But there is no equality for people here. And it's very frustrating. As a black person or a brown person, a Latino or Asian, whatever your aspirations are, it's frustrating to you. In education, they have had to come a long way because previously, before the 1960s, they didn't care. It doesn't matter what laws were on the books. They simply did not care. They did not educate our children, and people fought, marched, died so that black and brown children would be able to get a decent education. But white backlash is real, and no matter what we fought and won in the courts, they would obfuscate and hem and haw and put up all kinds of roadblocks to our ability to achieve whatever we had achieved in the courts. So check this out. I remember in the 1970s when my parents had come here, myself and my sisters, and they had to go to community meetings because, the white power structure in the educational system would advance these theories that black children were uneducable. Imagine that, uneducable. It's not that they wanted to teach us. They were saying, okay, we can't teach these children because they're uneducable. And our parents, and most of our parents, when they came from the diaspora, they didn't have great educations themselves, but they knew one thing. They knew that intelligence was all throughout our community. And for the white power structure to treat us as if our children were incapable of learning is a fallacy. So they fought, and they fought in the insistence that their children be given every chance at every other child. But you have to look at the racist nature of the American society and understand that they would resist, and they still resist, because anytime black people make progress in this country, it's met with resistance. That's the mechanism of white supremacy. They will not allow us to get anywhere, and because it all begins with education. So when the white power structure eventually runs into a black person, man or woman, and they're highly educated and they've really got their credentials, they're flabbergasted because they really don't know what to do, and they can't begin to explain how this person got to be of such credentials. If we look at housing, I can tell you that black and brown people, we're pretty much trapped in certain communities. It's not like the Warsaw Ghetto where you could look and see that there was a wall built around the community. But if you looked at maps, you could see pretty much the communities where they keep us. And this is intentional. Another thing that's been intentional, and it's been proven if you look at what was done in real estate in this country. They make it very difficult for us to purchase homes, and thereby, if we never get the opportunity to purchase homes, we can never accumulate wealth. I've been fortunate that I've been able to buy a home and was able to get some equity out of owning a home. I recently sold my home. One of the things I noticed, however, in terms of owning a home, I want to do a refinance. And it was about on $200,000 US, and they put me through hell to do it. And the same bank that I went to for the refinance would tell me they don't believe I could make the payment, even though I've been paying on my home for years. But right after they told me that they wouldn't give me the loan, they also told me that they would give me a loan to buy a car for $35,000. And I was amazed at that, because the car is debt. Whereas the home is equity. The home builds wealth. The car doesn't. The car just puts you in debt. So they've got these traps for us that they put in place. Debt traps, whether they're car loans, credit cards, consumer financing, student loans, they got us. And once you're in those debt traps, there's nowhere for you to go. They got you. They got you. And once that's because it's going to take you years. Like if you buy a house, the mortgage is 30 years. I mean, certainly you can try to figure out how to pay it off earlier, but it's a 30-year debt trap. Okay. Now, employment. If we look at employment, we can go into a whole nother thing. So employment is an area where if you deal with black people at all, you deal with black people and you ask them about their experiences about being a worker, being in this system, they could tell you clearly that black and brown people do the bulk of the work in this country. We do the work, but the accolades and the wealth, the pay for the work goes to the white power structure. We never get given, we never receive anything for the fruits of our labors. We're just kept at a subsistence level because that's what happens. You never get recognition. And I myself, I worked in civil service, so it was slightly different because a lot of that is merit based. But even so, for promotional, you know, you're not one of them. So they don't look at you the same way. You can still climb, but it takes you much longer. I did 28 years with the city of New York, so I'm in pretty good stead. I'm a pensioner now because I've retired, and I'm just waiting to be 62 so I can get my Social Security as well as my pension. But in a lot of levels, what I noticed was as the jobs became more difficult and more onerous, the whites wouldn't want to do those jobs anymore. What they would like is the pay level, but they don't want to do that work. So if they have a good person, a good brown or black person working under them, the person that actually does work, they will load all of that work onto that person. They'll never get rid of that person. That person can't move up. They can't escape because if that person moves up, there's no one there to do the work. So they keep you trapped in certain positions because they know that you're capable and you're willing to work and work hard and work longer. You come in early, you might stay late, but you're really about getting work done, which should be to your advantage, but it turns out to be a negative for you because they use that to keep you trapped, right? Because they have their own agenda and it's not for your benefit. And it's very frustrating to us. So a lot of times as black people or brown people, what we do is learn to keep our head down. We keep our head down and we just wait until we can retire and we take our pensions and our Social Security and we're gone. And we're hoping to go home or wherever we came from and say, hey, I'm out of that. Goodbye, Babylon. Hello, Zion. So that's what we do. Now, healthcare is another area in that I say for a country that's this wealthy, there is no way that healthcare should not be like a given for everybody, but it's not. Because I work for the city of New York, I had really good healthcare. It was a very robust healthcare package. It protected myself, my wife, my daughters. If you understand how serious healthcare is, it can make you or break you. 4.5, 5 years ago, I suffered a major heart attack and I almost died. But, you know, thank God, I had a lifestyle. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't drug, I don't do anything. And when I was much younger, I was an athlete. So my body was fairly strong. Now, in honesty, I was working 2 jobs at the time. I was working about 70 hours a week because with my life and my family and my responsibilities, there was no other way to do it but to work 2 jobs. So I was doing what I had to do, and eventually it caught up to me and my heart. My doctors were very good because my healthcare was very good and they saved my life. And I had to go back into the hospital about 4 months later to get a pacemaker put on my chest. So right now I'm not like I was. I'm compromised. I can tell you that, you know, it's a very frustrating thing because I know that there are people that have something like diabetes and they need insulin and they don't have healthcare, so they can't afford insulin. So these people die simply because, and they tend to be poor people, brown and black people. The converse of the, if you look at the opposite of that, in our country, we have a lot of wealthy, very successful superstar athletes and entertainers, and they are paid off the charts in terms of income that most regular people don't have. A lot of these brothers and sisters are really wonderful people. And if they speak up on any matters concerning the treatment of black people in this country, the white power structure slaps them and reminds them that, hey, whatever you've attained can be easily taken away. So take, for example, LeBron James, right? This brother is as conscious as you can get. He's done everything. He spoke up against police violence against unarmed black men because obviously you know that there's been these violence issues against black people. And the minute he spoke up, the white media pounced and basically told him to shut up and dribble, that his job wasn't to make social commentary, but to bounce a ball. Think about that. Like, he's not a person with a mind, with a brain that can assess. He's just supposed to bounce a ball for their enjoyment. So in terms of your capacity, they only care about the fact that you entertain them. It's not about your intellect or your capacity to raise your brothers and sisters up. It's about their comfort level with you being able to entertain them. So the consequence of that is the young brothers and sisters, the young lions in our community never speak up because they are in fear that the trinkets that they've worked so hard to attain will be easily taken away. And the white power structure is not afraid of using any means to rob you of those things. So take, for example, Bill Cosby, O.J. Simpson, Michael Jackson, Wesley Snipes. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on about people that the white power structure built up and then for some reason took them away. Like even the stuff with Cosby, and Cosby's in jail. The reason they went after Cosby wasn't because of any nonsense with him going after these women. What it was Cosby was putting together a deal to buy a major media television network. And that would have served to give black people a voice where they've never had a voice, and they will not allow. But let me close by saying this. To understand the United States, what you have to understand is that the United States is more than just a country. It's different. And I would like you to use your imagination and imagine the United States as a person, not a place, but as a person. And if the United States was a person, you'd ask, what kind of person is this? It would be a bully. The U.S. is a bully person. And not only are they a bully, but if you had to deal with them intimately, it would be a domestic batterer. Now, the battery is being done to us. We are the victims of the violence being perpetrated by the batterer. So black and brown people, they have, I mean, from the time that we've been here, brown people were here and black people were here before most of the Europeans got here. All right. We are the victims of their abuse. And if you've ever watched anybody that's a domestic batterer, they always want to isolate their victim. They want to keep their victim away from their family and friends. And then one of the things they do once they isolate them, they attack the self-worth of the victim. And they make that person believe that they're not loved by anyone and they have no other place to turn, nowhere else to go. So white power structure, white media always tells us Africans don't love you. Africans want nothing to do with you. This is your home. This is the only place. We're the only people that love you. But you have to understand that that is the mentality of a batterer. So usually the victim gets beaten and beaten and beaten until the harm is irreparable. And the batterer then comes back and then they demand intimacy from the victim. Now, in the U.S., black and brown people were murdered, we're maimed, we're beaten, we're sexually abused, we're mistreated, disrespected. We're told Africa doesn't want us, Africa doesn't love us, so we have no place else to go, and the abuser is the only recourse that we have. Think about that. Now, we kind of take a little time to get ourselves together and heal and say, okay, we'll face this another day. But we know that the next beating is coming. We know. It's not a matter of how we guess. We know the next beating is going to come. So in that instance, most of the time when you have a battered person, they come to the realization that they have to flee. They've got to go to a safe haven, a safe space, a women's shelter, a battered person's shelter, whatever it is. They got to flee to that so they can have safety. Well, if you really understand what I've just said, understand that in the U.S., the Americans, they are pimps and we're hoes. We're being beaten and treated like hoes, and we have no recourse, nothing. Now, understand that. That's real. But we have to end this right now. Eventually, if we stay here long enough, the batterer is going to succeed at killing us, and we'll have no recourse, because at that point, the game's over. So I can mention more about police abuse and abuse of power and authority and how they kill us, but all of you know that because that makes the news. What I've said to you doesn't make the news, but it's the reality for black people, brown people, Asians, even the people like the Asians have a slightly different reality because they're given honorary white status. Sometimes Latinos are given honorary white status in this country, but that only works when we're in the room. If we leave the room, the same hatred that gets visited on us is then turned on them. So when we leave the room, their ass gets kicked too. And then they're usually shell shocked because they don't realize, wait a second, because most of the time, they're kissing white people's ass and showing them that they could be just as horrible to black people as whites are to black people. But when we leave, that's their business. We have a home that we can go to. If they got to stay, that's on them. I feel sorry for my Native American brothers and sisters because this country was really theirs, and I don't have an answer. And God didn't give me the wisdom of Solomon to be able to solve that problem for them. But my thing is that, hey, we have a home. Let's go home. Let's leave this place. And I'm thanking the sister Juliet and everybody at the Bla Xit family for really congealing around this message and making people understand that, yes, we do have a home. We're not homeless. We're not sheltered. We can go back.